And thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is David Hudson. I'm an academic and a researcher based at the University of Birmingham, and have been doing work in or around public opinion and development aid for quite some years now. What I wanted to present on was the quantitative side of the images research that we did, and to show you how the public responds, both in terms of trying to find out more information, but also emotionally to different images. And this is one of the images that was in the group. It shows a women's bicycle race in Burkina Faso, celebrating the 8th of March, International Women's Day. Okay, so first of all, I'll tell you a little bit about how we did the research. So we had 71 images overall, and I will show you them shortly. And of the respondents that Katie was talking about, it was at the end of the survey, it was an experiment where we showed them 5 of the images at random. And so each image was shown over 170 times, and then people were asked about their emotional response and then whether they wanted to find out more information. I'll show you those questions that we asked them here so you can see the exact question wording. The emotional responses come from a long literature in psychology that breaks down emotions into a circumplex. So you have positive and negative emotional responses, but then you also have activated and deactivated emotional responses. So what you're looking at here is happy and excited, obviously positive and activated. Then you've got positive, deactivated. Then you've got negative, deactivated. And then you've got negative activated, right? So people can score themselves on a 1 to 5 scale when asked on each one of these, looking at the photo. Then we asked them, imagine you see this photo as part of an appeal. Would you like to find out more information about it? Yes, they do, or no, they don't. Right, so that's the setup. Very helpfully, Katie explained the segments, so I can skip through this, which is great for me. So let's show you some of the images that were submitted from DOCA's partners and the research team. So as you can see, they've all been had their branding taken off, and there's a real range of different kind of images here. Some of them are in Ireland, showing supporters or activists, volunteers, and many of them are obviously overseas in what we think traditionally as developing countries. Some of them are single people, some of them show a crowd, some of them are close-up. Then you can see there's different kind of emotional registers here as well. So number 8 here, not looking at the camera, but very content. Number 5, looking straight down the lens, but very passive, neutral to negative maybe. So there's lots of things that will make people feel and think different things as we showed them the images. So I'm not going to go through them all, but it gives you a sense of the range and variety looking at these. And of course the full slide deck will be made very available after this, so you can have a look through both at the images but also how people responded to them. And I have to say, when you do this kind of work, it's super interesting because you have all of these kind of unspoken hypotheses about which images are going to do well and which aren't going to do so well, and don't always get it right, I have to say. I really like number 34 there. I had high hopes. Didn't do so well. Okay, and then getting on to 71. So that shows you all of the images there. And I'll point out number 66 here. You can see the girl standing in a street that's clearly been affected by probably conflict, and we will come back to that one. So, how did respondents respond to these images? Well, on average, right, so this is just taking them all together, about half of the time, 53% of the time, when shown an image, the people in the survey, the respondents said that they would like to find out more, right? So there's a relatively high level of self-reported interest in finding out more, which I think I took to be a very positive result. But what you see here, and this again echoes what Katie was talking about, is that you've got the disengaged group, and only 1 in 5 times do they want to find out more. They truly live up to their name, right? They are disengaged. They're not really supporters. But as soon as you get to the empathizers, then you can see that we're almost at that 50% threshold. And then you get a big jump with the community champions and the global citizens. But it is the community champions and not the global citizens who are most likely to want to find out more. If we could, and we could look at those people in the disengaged that used to be empathizers maybe, we would probably find they are more likely to be in that 20%. That would be my suggestion. Okay, so this is the kind of thing that you'll want to go away and have a look at and pore over, especially if you're one of the organisations that's put one of the images in, to see how your images were, how they performed. And you can see here that number 66, that image that I pointed out of the girl standing in the street, is the one that was most likely to elicit people wanting to find out more information, right? That was selected 68% of the time. So you can see that really performed so much better than when you go all the way to the other end, the bottom one there, only 28% of the time. So images, and the images that we use, really do matter. Right? It's not like this kind of this general response. We get quite a high variation, and if you get using the right image, then you can really get people's attention and wanting to find out more. Okay. So now onto the emotional response, because there's been lots of work, and I'm sure all of you in your organisations know this already, but actually so much of this is not a cognitive area. Where the public comes into it thinking of it on the basis of knowledge, etc. It is quite a values-driven and emotional part of people's behaviour. Right, so again, for all of the images here, what we've done is, quote-unquote, create a little emotional footprint. So those 4 different types of emotions, or 4 different areas of emotions, segments, you can see that there's, that if they say a great deal, then they're higher up, and not at all further down. And if you look at them, there's clearly 3 kind of broad kind of responses here to the different images. First of all, you have ones where there's just basically no real response. It's quite flat, so you can look at maybe 22 here. It's kind of not much response, not much positive, not much negative, not much activated, not much deactivated. Secondly, we have the ones that have a very high negative and a very low positive response. So they're often the more traumatic or difficult images that people are looking at. And then there's the high positive and no negative ones. So the ones perhaps of smiling children, families, playing, those kind of things that people respond well to. Okay, so how does all this matter? Now we've kind of mapped it out. Well, when we put all of the different key variables that we have into a model, sorry about this if you don't like this kind of thing, there is the next slide which is just words, so I'll come on to that in a minute. But basically everything to the right of that black line, so there's 3 models here where we just build stepwise. We start off by just adding in the socio-demographics, then we add in the segments, and then we add in the emotional response of people to see how kind of stable these results are. So everything to the right of the black line, the vertical line, is showing that there's a positive effect of this particular variable, and everything to the left of the line is a negative effect. If it's grey, it's not statistically significant, so you can ignore it. The scale at the bottom, which shows like going up to 0.2 on that first one, that can literally be interpreted as probability. So if it's on 0.2, that would be an increase of 20%. All right, so that's the statistics lesson over. But what we can see here then is that being female, probably about a 5% more likely to want to seek information. Generation Z are similar, more likely to seek information. Though as we go along to the far right, you can see with emotions that actually that effect disappears once we add in those emotional responses. Just to pick out some key things here, I think again this confirms that the disengaged segment, like you you're not going to get at them. And that is a slight worry given that that seems to be increasing. So there's some kind of advocacy and strategic thought that needs to be given to that. But images probably isn't the way to go. That's one thing to say. In terms of then these bottom four here on the far right, happy, calm, sad, upset, the four kind of sections. What we see then is that if people report that they felt happy, positive and activated, seeing an image, then they become 7% more likely to want to find out more information. If people said that they felt upset, so negatively activated, they are 9% more. Those two are almost indistinguishable from each other. And if people said they felt calm, then they had a 2% more likelihood of wanting to find out more information. And if you make people feel sad, then they actually become less likely. So there's a very simple lesson there. Don't make people feel sad, okay? But you can upset them. So that's the summary of what I was just talking through. And so just to wrap up now, so what's the kind of key takeaways from this? Well, one, I think this is really important, and we found this in other research as well, that there are multiple ways to increase engagement. You can go through this positive activated pathway, but you can also go through a negative activated pathway. There might be unintended consequences of doing so though, so bear that in mind. We have found in other research that if you try and press that negative button too much, you actually depress people's sense of progress and hope. So that would be a warning there. Top images nearly always involve children, though crisis and need are also key there. In terms of the segments, we did this qualitatively and looked at kind of how they were responding, and these were our summary of this. That actually it varied quite a bit between the segments, which again I think is really useful and interesting when you're thinking about engaging with your audience. The empathizers were classically motivated by children in crisis and distress. Okay, so a very kind of traditional approach. Pragmatists, as their name suggests, very much liked targeted action. Multilateralists, it really varied. Community champions also responded to distress and need, but global citizens were much more likely to respond to the positive, everyday images of kind of real life. The way that I'm sure most people in this room would much prefer to represent the people that you work with. So again, I think there's a little bit of a challenge there of thinking about where the public is at and where we're at as well, and what we feel comfortable both ethically and normatively doing about that. Okay, as I said, don't make people feel sad, and those are classic images that scored very highly on people saying that they felt tired, bored, depressed, sad, negatively deactivated. Final thing I want to say before I finish. We could also use the results to create the perfect or the most likely image to be selected. And what it would look like, and this is where I'm so happy that I'm a researcher and not a creative person. The optimal emotional response is somebody scores 5 on happiness, 5 on calmness, 1 on sadness, and 5 on upset. How do you do that? I have no idea. But if you can do that, then there would be a 92% probability of that person finding out more. So there's a creative challenge. One thing I do think is these are all static images, obviously. Perhaps you could do that through something that's more like a video or a movie. You could take people on a journey maybe and create that. That's the closest I've come. But thank you very much, and look forward to the discussion.